Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Europa de Viva. Today, I'd like to talk about some geopolitical developments affecting Romania. And contrary to your expectations, I'm not going to speak about the East-West divide, but about the West-West divide. So, Romania is right now at the geopolitical fault line between the West and the West. What do I mean by that? There is an ongoing almost civil war between Romanian institutions going on right now in order to decide which direction will Romania align itself, if it will be with the United States or if it will be with the European Union. There is this approach avoidance dance between the United States and the European Union, even though the European Union itself is a post-war project of the United States. It has come to reach some sentience in recent times and to regard its potential future as different from that of just being a US proxy, because the US empire has begun to cannibalize its allies. Well, they call them allies, but they're essentially politically and militarily occupied countries. And the United States has begun to cannibalize the European economy. So there are some actors which have more autonomy, like France, and, well, to some extent Germany is participating in this, that they would like to see federal Europe, a European Union that is no longer susceptible to being bossed around by the United States. And the most important requirement for this is to ensure its own defense. And so, on the one hand, you have projects like SAFE, like Rearm Europe, projects of creating the European part of NATO into a self-sustaining alliance, into a self-sustaining organization that does not function at the behest of the United States as it has functioned for the past decades. And you have, on the other hand, the American interests to keep this proxy state that they have, this European proxy, as divided as possible, to undermine its cohesiveness and to somehow promise some sort of defense, even though it is at the same time withdrawing from Europe, to promise some sort of security guarantees that the European states cannot ensure. It's not exactly obvious what the United States is offering, what the United States is putting on the table. So there are various people, various commentators who are reticent to European federalization, just like I am as well, and who would rather see a much stronger involvement on behalf of the United States in Europe. However, I do not see how this fits in with the transactional nature of the United States that has become evident in the past years, ever since the second Trump term. So if before you could suspect the United States as being willing to defend Europe, right now the approach of the United States is to extract as much wealth as possible from Europe under the guise of a potential Russian attack. And it is essentially using Europe as a milking cow to extract procurement contracts in the fields of weapons, but also in the fields of energy, because the European Union severed its ties with Russia, with its main energy supplier, and as a consequence of this, it became quite dependent on imports of liquefied natural gas from the United States, which was an industry that had no future before Nord Stream was conveniently blown up. So these forces that are affecting Europe, and there are these so-called sovereigntist parties in quite a number of European states that favor closer ties to the United States, even though it's not exactly obvious what Europe or those countries can benefit from these ties. And there are the integrationists, there are the federalists, there are the parties that want to bring Europe closer to the state of a country, to the state of a federal state, of a confederacy, that has its own defense, that has its own common army, and that has its own foreign policy, and so on. And these trends manifest themselves in Romania as well. contrary to expectations, it's not the sovereigntist, pro-Atlanticist camp that is on the one side of the, let's say, civil war, but both sides are in the what used to be the pro-European camp or the pro-Western camp. The pro-American sovereigntists are still relegated to the cordon sanitaire, to being illegitimate political actors, and to being painted as being somehow pro-Russian, even though they are Trumpists and they represent the MAGA interests first and foremost. But they are left out of the equation, even though they have quite a sizable part of the Romanian parliament, and they are the first in the polls. If early elections were to be called, they would get almost half of the votes. But there's this, as I called it, ongoing civil war between Romanian state institutions. One camp that used to be pro-European favors the United States and favors closer collaboration with the US, which in turn means procurement contracts to US corporations, be them in the energy realm, in the defense realm, and even in the realm of the clothings of the emperor, from Hans Christian Andersen's tale. All sorts of industries which do not exist and which do not have the potential to exist, but the Romanian government is buying up contracts with those industries just so as to have some sort of elusive object on which to put a price tag, so as to have plausible reason to deliver the tribute to the United States. Like, for example, an AI quantum computing data center. AI quantum computing does not exist, but that does not prevent the Romanian government to buy it up. Just like a few years ago, the transportation minister from this pro-European camp that favors German interests above everything was not hindered by the fact that hydrogen trains do not exist, and he put a condition in the in this program of state procurement on European Union money to renew the train stock, the rolling stock of the Romanian train company with hydrogen trains, which were an experimental German technology which was not even viable enough to come to the tender and to offer its services. So in the end, the money was lost. Something similar is happening in the pro-US camp with all sorts of experimental US technologies like the small modular reactors, but also this, as I said, AI quantum computing data center, which is just a money grab and will never exist because it does not exist in theory, so it has little chances of existing in practice. And of course, the vertical corridor to bring in LNG from Greece to Romania, even though Romania is theoretically gas sufficient, so its internal production is enough to satisfy the demand at a much lower price than to import this LNG from the United States. So essentially, there's this former pro-European camp that became pro-Western, made up of the president of Romania and of the Social Democratic Party. And this wants to favor US procurement contracts, whereas the pro-European camp, which is made up of the European People's Party and Renew Europe subsidiaries in Romania, on the Romanian political scene, which want to favor German and French procurement contracts. And since the Romanian state budget is only one and the public debt can only go so low, the public debt can only go so high, there is this struggle between these two factions, both from the alleged pro-European, pro-Western camp of the political spectrum, to satisfy the needs of their sponsors. And it is the pro-American camp that has the upper hand, because that camp is with the president of Romania, that has control over the secret services and over the justice system, as it turns out. So there are all sorts of lawfare operations carried out on fast forward against the pro-Europeans. So the pro-Americans put the pro-Europeans in jail now, and all sorts of other shady things are going on through the courts. Decisions made up by the statutory bodies of the political parties are reversed in court, and so on. So there's a lot of quite visible and quite desperate measures being enacted against the pro-Europeans, so that the pro-Europeans accept to vote in a pro-American government. This is essentially the geopolitical divide going on right now. And the gloves are off, so such lawfare operations of this magnitude and of this frequency I have not seen ever in the history of the Romanian lawfare system. The United States set up these corridors of power in the Romanian judiciary 15, 20 years ago, and managed to convict quite a number of people in order to get them out of the political system, and also business people in order for foreign corporations to take over their businesses, and other judges that would not submit, and so on. But this was very carefully orchestrated, very carefully choreographed. So each such measure was preceded by a public information campaign, decredibilizing that person, trying to smear that person with all sorts of allegations, and then so to first get the person guilty in the eyes of the public opinion, and then to arrest them. And now the arrests are going on just from one day to the next, with no prior decredibilization of that person, with no smear campaign, no public assassination of that person's image. Just from one day to the next, various honorable people that were held in high esteem in Romanian society are being raided by the anti-terrorist brigade of the Romanian police, and are investigated by the Directorate Against Organized Crime from the prosecutor's office, and so on. So there are all of these show trials going on, which are one-sided. They only go into they only go against the pro-European camp, and they have as anticipated result the total capture of power by the pro-American camp. And interestingly enough, without the help of the Trumpists, without the help of the so-called sovereigntists, who make up, as I said, a large part of the Romanian parliament and who are very well positioned in the polls. But somehow Romania wants to mend its relations with the United States and become a faithful client state to the US without the help of the part of the opposition which they delegitimized for so long. Now, my concern, my doubt goes in the direction of what has Romania to gain. So, okay, from the further integration into the European Union, of which I'm very skeptical, Romania would have to gain some sort of equal status with the other European countries, some sort of cohesion funds, perhaps collective defense, even though it looks more like collective offense. The West doesn't seem to have peaceful intentions with respect to Russia. But from the partnership with the United States, when the United States is withdrawing from Europe and is only discussing with its so-called allies on strictly pecuniary premises, what is there to gain? What is there to gain by offering contracts for nothing to American corporations, or to offer lobby contracts to the MAGA movement in order to secure a photo op with Trump? Is the Romanian security establishment thinking that if they just give enough money to the United States will just accept to put in soldiers' lives on the line and to defend Romania in case of a Russian attack? Is this their logic? Because as I see things, it is in the interest of the United States to milk the client regimes as to the greatest extent possible. And at the same time, it is also in the United States' best interest to threaten those regimes into being attacked by the geopolitical rivals of the United States, so as to make them contribute more to the coffers of the US defense industry. So scaring Romania into thinking that it would be attacked by Russia is a win-win scenario. And if we add in the proxy strategy of the United States in dealing with its geopolitical rivals, then Romania's role as a bulwark against Russia adds to that. So adds to Romania's value as a proxy. And if the Romanian security elites think that the country will be safer if they become even more vassalized by the United States and they submit to the wills of the United States even more, then they will bring Romania not only to the situation where its state coffers will be looted completely for various projects that it does not need and that will enrich the US corporate system and some lobbyists from Washington, but it will even put its security in peril. It will jeopardize its own security even more, because the United States might be tempted to use it, just like it is using Taiwan and the Philippines against China, to use it against Russia, just to have it believe that it is attacked by Russia, so as to use the Romanian population in filling up the gaps in the front lines in the war in Ukraine, so as to extend the life of the Ukrainian proxy, through which the US is fighting this destabilization war against Russia. It's very convenient for the US to use Romania in such a way, and if the Romanian elites simply want to take orders from Washington and believe that this is making the country safer, then I see no reason why Romania should not end up in that situation. Why Romania should not why Romania should not follow in the footsteps of Ukraine, as it did from the coup d'etat in 2014 until today. So if Romania wants to follow the recipe of the neocons in Washington, D.C., it has a model of what will happen by just looking at its northern neighbor. It's very easy to predict what the path will be if the Ukrainian scenario is pursued. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about today. This very interesting development in which one part of the pro-Western political spectrum fights the other part of the political spectrum, and it is the pro-Americans that have the upper hand, even though in the past years the pro-Americans have been labeled conspiracy theorists, domestic extremists, and pro-Russian agents. So all of a sudden MAGA became fashionable, Trump became a respectable figure, and the subservience to the United States became the recipe for the power structure, not just for the opposition that is aspiring to take power in Romania in the next elections. So until next time, take care.